Earlier this week, President Trump avoided the third high-profile assassination attempt made against him. The Teflon Don was ready to roast the corporate press at the White House Correspondents' Dinner when the event was rudely interrupted by some loser lefty barely worth mentioning. A 31-year-old absolute failure of a human being who came up with the brilliant idea of sprinting down a hallway filled with Secret Service agents to try and run and gun the President of the United States. The plan was actually taken directly from Sun Tzu's The Art of War from the chapter entitled Tactics for Idiots. This would-be assassin released an online manifesto that features all the typical boring leftist causes and conspiracies you could think of. Just an embarrassing collection of reasons to throw your life away in order to accomplish absolutely nothing. Have fun in prison, you waste of space, and 3 cheers for President Trump and his continued success. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Okay, hello, welcome in, everybody. I have 2 topics. Well, actually, it's really just one topic, 2 parts of one topic that we're going to get into. Most of it is going to focus on the assassination attempt against President Trump, and the rest of it's going to be talking more broadly about the rise of violence on the left. And we don't really have a favorite comment from last week, so I'm going to hop right into topic 1, the 3rd-ish attempt against President Trump. So the title of this, the 3rd-ish attempt, I say that because this is not really the 3rd attempt. This is the 3rd attempt that the media wants to talk about and acknowledge, but there have been many more attempts made against President Trump. And, I mean, we all know, so just the ones we do know. July 2024, he's in Butler, Pennsylvania. The shooter takes a shot at him. It hits him in the ear, and then he's shot dead a couple moments later. We all know that one. That one's very high profile. That's the Trump with blood running down his face, his fist up, yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." Perfect time to show my bobblehead. If only it was in arm's reach. But yes, we all know that one. We all remember that one. And then 2 months later, you had the guy who was arrested while lying in the bushes at the West Palm Beach golf course that Trump owned, where he was getting ready to come out on a round of golf. I think he was a couple holes away at the time, and Secret Service spotted this guy. I think there was some gunfire exchange. I'm not sure. I think that one's still alive. He might be dead, too. I actually don't remember if they killed him or if he's in jail, but they got this guy, too. So there was 2. This is number 3, but not really, because what we don't know, or what's not talked about a lot, is the guy who was shot dead by the Secret Service after he managed to break the perimeter of Mar-a-Lago. He was inside Mar-a-Lago. He got shot dead by Secret Service. This was 2 months ago. President Trump was not in residence, but the guy didn't know that, or he doesn't appear to have known that. But he was there to kill President Trump. Okay, we don't talk about that one. That was number 3. We also don't talk about there was a Pakistani business owner who was being backed by Iranian officials who was attempting to hire a hitman in the United States who got busted, and we don't talk about that guy. Well, that was number 4. We also don't talk about the countless little attempts or little threats that are made against the president. That's 5 right there, by the way, if we're including this new one. But we don't talk about that. President Trump, when he thinks about himself as the most targeted man in history, he's probably correct. He probably is right that he has been targeted more than any other president for assassination. I don't know if it's close. I feel like it's definitely President Trump. But we're going to focus this week, not just on the past attempts, but we're going to talk about this one in particular, and then the disturbing trend of violence that we've seen from the left in recent decades, really, but especially the last 10 years or 15 years. This week, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, there was a 31-year-old man who basically his entire plan was not well thought out. I'll just say that. I think, listen, I'm not going to just Monday morning quarterback your assassination attempt here. However, I don't understand the thought process that goes into this guy. You know, the guy in Pennsylvania, he's like, okay, well, I've plotted out the location. He's got a roof. He's going to do this sniper thing. Okay, there's some thought here. This guy, his whole attempt was, I'm going to run down this hallway and just try to run past all the Secret Service agents so I can get a shot at the president before I get shot dead. Not a lot of thought here. I'm not saying that actually what's crazy is the assassination attempts that have worked in the past, or at least attempted to work. A lot of times it's people just walking up to the president and shooting him. And, you know, I'm not here to Monday morning quarterback this guy, but it just seems like this is a lazy attempt. I'm going to be honest with you. It just doesn't seem that great. But his whole thing was he was going to sprint down a hallway and try and shoot the president. Now, he didn't make it, but I want to show, first of all, let's just show the guy. Here's the guy. Look at this absolute degenerate. So ignore this nonsense article below it, but I just wanted to find the good picture of him. So this is the guy after he's been arrested in the hallway with the Secret Service agents. Here's him, 20 minutes before in his hotel room. So this is the guy. It speaks volumes that our generation, this guy, the one thing he said, I'm probably going to go die. I'm going to go shoot the president, and I am probably going to be killed in the process. I better take a selfie real quick so that everyone knows how good I looked in my assassination gear. So you can see here he's got multiple guns, knives. I don't know what this is. Handcuffs? What is that? I don't know what that is. But he's got multiple guns, knives, all sorts of things on him, and he's taken this mirror selfie right before the assassination attempt was made. Now, here was his plan. Basically, I think the way that the building works, you can see this little chart from the BBC. This is like the entrance from the hotel. He was staying in the hotel where this event was being had. His plan was to run down this hallway through the metal detectors, engaging with Secret Service here, he had to run down a couple flights of stairs into the ballroom, where Trump is then at the front of the ballroom, and he's coming in. I think this is from the back entrance. So he's across an entire giant room full of people. Not a well-thought-out plan. Thankfully, he's an idiot, so he didn't get anywhere close to actually assassinating the president. He shot a Secret Service agent somewhere in this hallway, and then he was eventually brought down. I'm not sure. He wasn't shot. At least I don't believe he was shot. I think he just surrendered at a certain point. I'm not 100% sure what happened, but obviously this is him. Somehow lost his shirt in the process. I'm not sure exactly what was going on here. Maybe they were searching him for explosive device or something. I really have no idea what's going on, why he all of a sudden is naked in this hallway, but that's the guy. That's that moron. He went from, oh, look at me in my nice suit and tie to winding up naked in a space blanket face down on the carpet of a hotel. Anyway, what an absolute degenerate and loser. And we're glad he didn't succeed. So one of the Secret Service agents was hit. I believe they are recovered now, and we're thankful for that. This guy, this person. Oh, before we get into that, I want to show one more thing. So this, here's a video. Let me find it here. So this is a video of Donald Trump when the gunshots first started happening and what happened on stage. I just want to play this real quick. Take a look. Holy Jesus, that's loud. Let's turn that down. Okay. Let's take that down to half. So you can see there's Donald Trump. He's sitting up at the table. Someone's coming in talking to him. You hear some gunshots. It's kind of far away, so the president doesn't notice it. And then you hear a bunch of people in the room. This is when people started moving, getting under tables. He looks around, totally calm, totally with it. They say, oh, Secret Service comes in. They say, all right, Mr. President, let's get out of here. He says, okay. He stands up. He exits the stage. There's the people who are with him. Everyone exits the stage. But I want you to take a look at his face. Just right here. Let me see if I can pause that just a second. People are moving. You see it now. People are ducking. Look at how calm he is right now. You see Melania here is scared. This guy's scared. The Secret Service agents are all moving. Look at his face. Doesn't even move. Doesn't even blink. He just looks around. Oh, all right. Oh, it's happening again. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll get out of here. And then he just stands up. They cover him first, so they're making sure he's good. They cover him. Then they move down the steps off the stage. This is what I want, though. This might seem silly, but I'm actually very serious when I say this. This is what I want in a president. And I'm just going to pause it again for you. I want you to take one more look at this. Look at the faces. Scared. These guys are moving. He's scared. Look at the grin. Look at the confidence. He just looks around, totally stone-faced, not at all intimidated. That's a guy who's been shot at before, and I think that's important to know that I think that if the Butler, Pennsylvania thing didn't cement it in your mind that Donald Trump, despite what everyone says about him and all the people on the left want to tell you, and he's scared and he's a coward, he is absolutely a brave person, because all these other people in that room were panicking. Did he look panicked at all? Absolutely not. And I love that. I want to get into, so that's just a brief overview of what happened. And we're going to talk about the actual important things. I don't care about the logistics of what happened or why this or why that. That really is not important. What is important is, why did this happen? And the shooter, he released a manifesto online. And I want to just read you a couple excerpts. So these are quotes from the manifesto that he released as to why he was doing what he was doing. He said, quote, "I am not the person raped in a detention camp. I'm not the fisherman executed without trial. I'm not a school kid blown up, or a child starved, or a teenage girl abused by the many criminals in this administration." Then he went on later to say, quote, "I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." End quote. Okay, so why did he do this? Well, I'm going to list a couple factors here. The first one is, he's absolutely a crazy person. Okay, so we'll just get that one out of the way. You do not attempt to do something like this if you don't have a screw loose. This guy was obviously obviously had some issues and needed those to be addressed. So he obviously had problems, mentally unstable. I would say that a person who wants to go and assassinate somebody, you probably got something wrong with you. The other unfortunate bit about this is that he believes all of the corporate press and their lies. He believes the lies that have been fed to him about all the nonsense leftist causes that absolutely feed into the violent fringe mindset. So when you have this certain kind of thing, you are a persuadable person. You are able to you're able to be persuaded. When you have someone who just constantly inundates you with lies and mistruths and propaganda, you start believing this because you are susceptible to that kind of propaganda. And once you start believing it, you might act on it. So he listed a number of things here. And so he talks about immigration. He talks about the Venezuelan drug boats, the Iranian girls' school, the teenage girls abuse. Each one of those is an absolute lie. Each one of those is a definite lie. The immigration thing. Oh, you think that Donald Trump, he's a fascist. The Gestapo is ICE, and it's terrible and everything. Well, no, it's not. The Republican argument against immigration, it's not based on race. It's not based on anything other than economics. It's a moral and economic judgment against people who are breaking the law and they are a drain economically on the country. Anyone who wants to point to and says that it's an economic benefit for the U.S. to have nothing, just unfettered illegal immigration, or the 20 million illegals that are here, you are out of your mind. I would be happy to have that debate with you, and I will show you every step of the way that you are wrong, because it is not true that the unfettered illegal immigration from the southern border is a boon for the economy. This is absolutely false. So, and that's my argument. It has nothing to do with the fact that brown people are coming across the border. I could not care less if a bunch of Swedes if we lived next to Sweden and they were coming up from the southern border and they're white as the driven snow. It doesn't matter to me. It's bad for the country. You should know who comes in and out. It's a ridiculous argument. Oh my gosh, we're putting people in detention centers. Yes, so we can send them home where they belong. We don't want to keep them in detention. I don't want to lock them up forever. Send them back. Send them back. Don't let them in. You break the laws of the country, you are barred from ever. That's it. You come across illegally, you are never allowed in the United States again. That would be my rule. So we're not blowing up fishermen. Neither is the U.S., you fool. The people that we've blown up, the drug boats, they are absolutely responsible for the deaths of Americans. These are not people sitting there off the coast of Venezuela in their little hat with their fishing pole out. This is not who we are blowing up drug runners, criminals who are killing Americans with fentanyl. That's who is dying in the waters. But he believes, oh my gosh, these poor, innocent Venezuelans, who just yearn for freedom. The fishermen out there, not true. Nothing was true about that. What was the exact quote here? Said, I'm not a school kid blown up. Well, I'm assuming this is an assumption, I am assuming that he's talking about the Iranian girls' school. Oh, okay. So the Iranian girls' school that the U.S. bombed. This is true. We killed, I think it was 100 and something school-age girls in Iran. It's a terrible mistake. It's a bad thing. Let me explain something to you. First of all, in any conflict, a violent armed conflict, there are going to be people who die. Collateral damage. It's a real thing. It's a bad thing. You don't want it. If we could execute the war in Iran without killing a single person, innocent person, that'd be amazing. It's never been done. Never, ever, ever, ever. The Iranian girls' school that was hit, there are two possibilities here. And let me tell you what I believe. I'm going to believe possibility number 2. Possibility number 1. Possibility number 1 is that the United States intentionally bombed a school in Iran to kill a bunch of school children. Possibility 2 is that this happened through bad information and it was an accident that the United States did this. Now, those are the two possibilities. We did it on purpose. We did it on accident. I believe we did it on accident. Why do I believe that? Because the United States immediately came out and shared the intelligence with the public. They basically declassified the intelligence and said, this entire complex that we bombed, it used to be a military stronghold in Iran. About 6 months ago, some of the building was the military basically moved out of this part of the building and they allowed people to go to school in this part of the building. But the intelligence that went with the mission was basically 6 months outdated, where they said, oh, we had all these military targets in Iran picked out about a year ago, and some of them hadn't been updated to include all the new information. So this girls' school that was bombed, it was a terrible accident. And it's tragic. You don't want anyone to die. But again, this guy's saying he's not a school kid blown up. As my guess, again, I don't know this for a fact, I'm going to guess that he believes we did that on purpose. Now, Iran would do that on purpose. Iran would do that to Israel. They would blow up a school in Israel if they could. They would do it on purpose. The United States, Israel, they don't do that. We don't fight wars that way. When we kill innocent civilians, we come out and say, our bad. Sorry. We didn't mean to. Hey, listen, we're fighting a war with you, but we don't want to kill children in your country intentionally. Iran would absolutely do that. The other side of this, they would do that. And this is the moral equivalency that does not exist, where he says, I can't believe the U.S. They would kill school children in Iran. Well, Iran would absolutely do the same. They would do it on purpose. Same with Hamas, same with Hezbollah, these absolute animals, these barbarians from the 7th century who deserve to be wiped off the face of the earth. That Hamas and Hezbollah, these terrorist organizations, hell-bent on the genocide of the Jewish people and the destruction of America. Yeah, I have nothing nice to say about them. So this moral equivalency, oh my gosh, America's so bad because we killed school children on accident. Well, our enemies would do it on purpose. Okay, so it's just ridiculous. Again, and what was the other thing? He said, oh, this is the big one. So the teenage girls abused. I would say this is an obvious shot at the President of the United States, who's been called a pedophile and a rapist and the worst person who ever existed ever, and he's done everything. And this is no doubt Epstein lied nonsense. Oh my gosh, Donald Trump is mentioned 38,000 times in the Epstein files, guys. He's obviously in on it. Show me one thing. That's all I'm asking. One piece of evidence. That's it. Just one thing. Show me one victim who's come forward, who's credible, and says, hey, yeah, this happened. Where are they? You're saying, we got to release the files. Well, there's 1,000 women out there who are saying that they were abused by Epstein. Okay, which one of them are naming Donald Trump? Let's get them up there. Let's hear their stories. No, I hear crickets. Where are they? Everyone's, Donald Trump's obviously complicit. He's covering it up. I don't believe this for a second. I don't. Not even a little bit. And the reason I don't believe this is because Joe Biden and the Democrats were in charge of these files. Do you think if there was one thing that implicated Donald Trump in a crime that he wouldn't have been charged with it? Donald Trump was charged with 11 billion crimes when he wasn't in office. Do you think this wouldn't have been one of them? They could find one thing in the Epstein file that says Donald Trump is a rapist or a pedophile, that they wouldn't have splashed it on the cover of every piece of press that they could possibly manage? No, absolutely. Of course they would have. So I don't believe it at all. But obviously this moron believes it. So This is why. This is why he attacks for basically, like I said, an embarrassing collection of mistruths and falsehood and propaganda from the corporate press, or from the Democrats, facilitated through the corporate press. And they lie, and then they use this charged language to talk about it, and it's ridiculous. So I have a very clear standard on this. When I'm about to talk about the Democrats and their charged rhetoric, my thought is very clear, which is you're allowed to say what you want. The standard for incitement is pretty clear. It is a pretty legally defined. You can't just say, well, they talk in a charged way, they're responsible for violence. I don't believe that. I don't believe that Chuck Schumer is responsible for the attempt on Brett Kavanaugh just because he said the Supreme Court justices are going to reap the whirlwind. He's allowed to speak passionately. You're allowed to say things. You're allowed to say things like, it's a fight. Oh, we're going to war with the Democrats. Okay, I get it. This is the fighting words. You're allowed to say things like this. It's not the worst thing in the world. But the problem with the Democrats is that they talk about Donald Trump in a different way. They talk about Donald Trump as though he is Hitler. And then they act surprised or they pretend at least, they pretend they're surprised that people want to kill him. Well, let me just show you. I'll show you exactly what I mean so that we can all be on the same page here. This was actually put together by The Blaze. It's a great little compilation of some high-profile Democrats talking about Donald Trump. Listen in.
3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist!" exclamation point, "Catch!" exclamation point.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core.
Fascist. Let me shut down the city! We are at war!
We're at a war right now.
We are at war.
So you have to be willing to do whatever is necessary in order to save the country.
And that's why the gloves are off.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
And yes, there are many threats to democracy. We see it with these extreme candidates.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
But you can only push people so far. And then they start to take matters into their own hands.
What the American public want is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. This is an actual fight.
You know, this is literally call to arms.
The MAGA movement is a threat.
Michelle says that, when they go low, we go high.
No. With all due respect, if they go low, we don't go high.
When they go low, we kick them.
We take them to the mud and choke them out.
And make sure that they stay down. And you know what? Kick them when they're down, because they deserve it.
Get up in the face of some Congress people.
We are going to be in your face. We are going to be on your...
We have to fight this in the streets.
And we're going to fight it in the streets. It's time to step out of your comfort zone and step out into the streets.
To our Republican colleagues, if you do not see the light, we will bring the...
Okay, so that's how Democrats talk about Donald Trump. They say he's a fascist. They got to get out in the streets. We got to push back on... Oh, actually, hold on. One more thing. They're about to play this Maxine Waters clip. Hold on.
Fire. Resist! You and your little friend off of Twitter. Y'all about to find out.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store.
What about a gasoline station? Yeah.
You push back on them. So this is how they talk about Donald Trump. They use this different kind of language. They say he's a fascist. Now, I'd have to do some searching. I actually tried to earlier. I was looking for somebody to put together. Again, that was put together by The Blaze. I was looking for somebody who put together a compilation of them just referring to him as Hitler. But they call him a fascist. They compare him to Hitler. They say he's a threat to democracy. MAGA extremism is going to take democracy. You're never going to have an election again because Donald Trump's not going to let it happen. He's a threat to democracy. How do you get to act surprised that you are inciting a bunch of lunatics to want to murder Donald Trump when you talk like this? Now, I don't like Joe Biden. I didn't say Joe Biden was an existential threat to democracy. I didn't say Joe Biden was going to ruin the republic. Joe Biden did things that were more authoritarian than Donald Trump. We forget COVID, but Joe Biden signed a bill. It got struck down in court, but he signed a bill that would have required 100 million Americans to get a vaccine. It would have mandated that a third of the country get the COVID vaccine or be fired from their jobs, ostracized from society. That's more authoritarian than anything Donald Trump has done ever, period, or could ever do. But we didn't talk about Joe Biden this way. I don't like Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden was a corrupt, incompetent, senile, old fool. I don't have anything nice to say about him. I think he's the worst president probably, maybe ever. And that's a pretty low bar because we've had some bad presidents. We had Woodrow Wilson as president. So that's how bad it can get. Joe Biden was terrible. And we didn't talk about him that way. And then they act surprised. But the question is, and I was just listening to, I was going to bring this up, and then I listened to, Dennis Prager had a show he put out yesterday where he was talking about this question that he poses, that I have been posing as well, which is that if you think this, why wouldn't you want to kill Donald Trump? Like the Democrats, if you think he's a fascist, if you think he's the next Mussolini or Hitler, if you think he's a threat to democracy, how can you say these things and then also say we shouldn't commit violence against him? Because if he was Hitler, if you really believed he was Hitler, why wouldn't you want him to die? So there's two possibilities. Either you do want him to die, and you're lying when you condemn it, or you're lying and you don't really believe it's Hitler. Because I think if I was given the chance, I go back to 1937, and they put me in a room with Adolf Hitler, and they say, all right, you know, one of you's coming out alive, or you can shake hands and both go your separate ways. I'd be like, I'm coming out alive. All right, Hitler's dead. He's a dead man. Because if I have the opportunity to kill Hitler, why wouldn't I? But at the same time, why are you're calling Donald Trump Hitler, and then somebody tries to kill him, and then you have to come out there with J.B. Pritzker and go, well, violence is wrong. Why? Why is violence wrong against Hitler? Why, if you're Donald Trump as Hitler, I don't understand it. Because they're a bunch of liars. Lying liars who do nothing but lie. And this kind of leads into topic 2 or topic 1B, because they go kind of together. The rise of violence on the left, it's hard to know one way or the other. I'm stumbling over myself there. It's hard to know one way or the other. Is it the language that's causing the violence, or are we just more violent and more partisan, and therefore the language sort of follows because we're already down this road? I don't know which is first. This is a real chicken and egg situation. But a YouGov poll found that 25% of very liberal Americans say that violence is justified to achieve political goals. 25%. Now, using violence to achieve political goals, and I'm fairly certain, is the textbook definition of the word terrorism. 25% of very liberal Americans are fine with it. And that contrasts with 3% of very conservative Americans. So it's clearly a problem of young liberals versus the old liberals. But it's been true for decades that the left thinks this way and the right does not. And I want to show you, you'll see this all the time. I remember I've seen people come in my comments and talk about this. Well, the political violence in America is a right-wing phenomenon. Well, look at my chart. I have this chart over here. I'll show you. And then they show something incredibly stupid like this chart from The Economist. So check this out. This has actually literally been brought up in my comments before to when I talk about the political ideology and the violence of the left. They'll bring up these kind of insane charts. So this is from The Economist. This is a little old, but this is a great chart from last year. The ideologies behind political violence in America. Now you look at this chart, all this red at the bottom, that's that dirty right-wing extremist violence. As you can see, the red chart, it's gigantic. And look at the black. Look at the left chart. Look at these little blips of left-wing violence. I mean, guys, you can't argue. It's on a chart. You can't argue with this. This is just science. And this is the kind of science that's brought up to demonstrate that it is a right-wing problem. Well, let's talk about this chart in particular. Let's talk about what's wrong with this chart. So I keep showing my work here. The chart that we're looking at right here what do we notice about it? We notice some funny things. So this goes back to 1990, and it's all the way up. It doesn't have data for 2025, but it's got all this other data. What are a couple things we noticed right off the bat? Now, I remember a couple things here. What do I remember? Well, do you remember, here's 2014. 2014, 2015. You see these tiny, small little black slivers. What was going on in 2014 that may have been left-wing violence that apparently just doesn't get counted? Oh, yeah, the Ferguson riots. The Black Lives Matter riots that ran through the city. Oh, what? I guess those don't count. What about 2020? My gosh, look at this. This tiny little black. What was the biggest thing to come out of 2020? Was it the George Floyd Summer of Love riots? I think it was. Apparently those don't get counted as left-wing violence. Look at this. All this crazy right-wing violence that you remember from 2020. Whatever it was. And then you got this tiny little black blip here at the top where they just don't count the riots. Oh, riots don't count. Riots don't count anymore. Well, how else is this chart just absolutely wrong? Well, the chart, they have a couple things wrong with it. They don't count prison violence the same way. So any prison violence perpetrated white on black is counted as right-wing violence because most of the white population in prison belongs to the Aryan Brotherhood. The Aryan Brotherhood codes right, so every white on black crime that takes place in prison is counted as right-wing racial violence. They don't count black violence in prison as left-wing violence. Okay, well, that's just one little point. How about the asymmetric coding of other types of violence? Again, in the general public, white on black tends to automatically be counted among the extremist violence, and they code it right-wing. So they'll count it as right-wing violence. They don't do this with black on white. Black on white violence isn't counted as left-wing violence. White on black is. Black on white, not so much. Even when the violence is explicitly racial in nature. So if somebody attacks someone because they're white, the black on white often doesn't get coded as left-wing violence, which is ridiculous. So they just don't count it. They don't count the violence. They also this chart, it counts murders. They don't talk about ideological assaults, riots, arsons, other non-fatal attacks. They systematically erase leftist violence. They don't count arson. Well, who burns down buildings? I bring it up all the time. 2020, I had a 7-Eleven next door to me, never been rebuilt, got burnt down in these riots. All the cars that were out front in the street, all burned down. They don't count as left-wing violence. Who was in the street that year? Was it the right that was protesting George Floyd? No, it was Black Lives Matter. That, as left as you can get, doesn't count. Doesn't count. They don't want to, riots. Riots don't count. Breaking windows, burning down businesses. This doesn't count. Assaults don't count. All the hate crime stuff. Remember the anti-Asian hate thing? Who was perpetrating that? Was it the right wing? Remember the Stop Asian Hate movement, and everyone made it seem, it kind of alluded to the fact that maybe it was those right-wing racists. No, it wasn't. It was a bunch of black people in the United States who were hating on Asian people. Does that code right-wing to you? No, but it doesn't get counted. It's not going to get counted as left-wing violence. They do this. These data sets are absolutely ridiculous. The other way, they don't code the pro-Palestinian data as left-wing violence. So you can see in this chart specifically. So take a look at the chart again. They have ideologies, left, right, other, which is gray. And then they have this dark gray, Islamist. This Islamist violence, they count it as its own kind of violence, because what they don't do in this stuff is count pro-Palestinian violence as left-wing. Well, who is that in the United States? Would you say the right is the pro-Palestinian movement? No, of course not. That's why you wind up with queers for Hamas out there in the streets. Queers for Palestine out in the streets wearing their keffiyehs and their rainbow flag at the same time. Like, I could use a bunch of bad words, but I'm not going to. But that doesn't get coded. That doesn't get counted among the left-wing violence, not according to these. They just do not count. This is how you wind up with this. They don't count left-wing violence. They only count right-wing violence, and they'll count silly things too. Other things counted in that list. If you were arrested for protesting outside of an abortion clinic, not committing violence, not actual violence, but blocking access. So if you linked your arms and you sat around an abortion clinic, which is actually what some of these people were arrested for, they counted that as right-wing violence. What violence was committed? That as far as I'm aware, that's actually peaceful protest. I understand it's against the law. I'm not saying people should do it, but I'm just saying that actually is protest, peaceful protest. If you link arms and you sit in front of an abortion clinic and you're protesting, you're trying to raise awareness for what you think is an immoral cause, but that's counted as violence in these charts. Again, they don't count speakers on college campuses. 10 years ago, when I started writing about this, they didn't count any of this. They didn't talk about this. They said it wasn't a real problem. Michael Knowles had a pipe bomb that was thrown at him while he's on stage, or at the building while he's on stage. That's not counted. I don't see it on any chart. I can't find it on the database that you pull up the data for this and you type in Michael Knowles. Nothing pops up. Nothing about the people who were arrested and sent to prison for trying to throw an explosive device at a conservative speakers conference. How about Charles Murray? Charles Murray and the person who was with him getting assaulted at Middlebury College. Oh, that's not on there. How about Brett Weinstein? Fearing for his life, having the college at Evergreen just taken over by radical leftists. Oh, it's not counted as violence. Okay. What about Jordan Peterson? What about the speeches that he gave where they broke windows at the building and you had people inside who said they literally feared for their lives? How about this? How about this? Remember this? Oh, look at them. They're peacefully protesting until they start banging on the doors and the windows. They show it right here. Let me find it. They're chanting, lock them in, burn it down at some point here.
I'm still trying to figure out where I stand on a lot of respect. And that's not a defense, and Kingston community does not support this kind of rhetoric, and we won't stand for it.
Yeah. So here they are. So look at them. Oh, look at all this peaceful protesting. Hanging on the windows. They eventually break a couple of them.
Having this discourse because clearly they don't.
I want to show this guy, by the way. I don't know who this person is who's about to speak. I want to play just a little clip of this. I don't know who this person is that's about to speak, but I absolutely love it. Listen to what this guy says.
They are here having this discourse because clearly they don't agree with what he has to say, so they're showing it. But I have seen a lot of people, call for him to be canceled. They are shouting that Daniel Wolf should be ashamed of himself for allowing this to happen, and that I just think is wrong. I don't know. It seems like we have a lot of very angry people here because someone's expressing an idea different than their own. And here at a university, I kind of thought that was the point.
I don't know who that person is, but absolutely get two snaps for this guy. Look at, by the way, does not look like the kind of person you would expect to be on the right side. This person is wearing lipstick and earrings and a choker and some pink glasses. It's a guy, but just absolutely nails it. This was my whole thing when I was on the left. I said, this is not what what liberalism is supposed to be about. Liberalism is supposed to be about freedom of expression. And so 2 snaps to this person for absolutely nailing it. Again, I probably disagree 80% with this person on politics. I'm making some broad assumptions here, but based on the fact that this is a dude wearing lipstick, I can imagine we disagree on some things. But yet we can agree on this because this is what classical liberalism used to be about. It used to be about the idea that we meet bad ideas with good ideas, we debate, we talk about things, we don't get violent. Protests are great. I think you have the right to protest. That's awesome. Go do it. Protesting does not extend to the heckler's veto. It does not extend to shouting down speakers. You don't get to do that. You don't get to interrupt the free speech of other people to exercise your free speech. That's not what protesting is. You want to stand outside. The kids at SLU years ago did a bake sale they were donating things outside of Alan West was giving a speech. They did a bake sale. They were giving it to some leftist cause. This is great. That's fine. That's great protest. Have at it. But this heckler's veto, these people get violent. They got violent with so many speakers over the last 10 years, and they just don't count it. So when you see things where they talk about, well, right-wing violence is a real problem, it's not true. It's not true at all. It's not even a little true. They just show bad data. They do bad science, or they lie. The Economist is lying. The Cato Institute is lying. They are picking stats that make the right look bad and the left look good. And when you dive into the data, as we just did here, just a little bit, we could do more. These are just big examples of how they code things to make their side look good and the right look bad. But it's not. Look at the assassinations that are happening. Charlie Kirk, the attempts against Donald Trump, the shooting of Steve Scalise. The violence in this country, the burning down of buildings, the taking over of streets, the attack of federal officers, this is all from one side. The best the left can do is say, well, what about January 6th? Fine. January 6th was stupid. That's one day. One day that you have. What else do you got? Who else? Where are the examples? Show them to me. I want to know where they are because I don't see them. And it's not because I don't look. It's just because they don't exist. I have other examples. I can think of some right-wing extremist violence. It's not that it never happens. I'm just saying the scale, the level on the left and the people who are calling for it. The New York Times is normalizing Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker, who says that the streets should run red with capitalist blood, who says that we should be gutting people, this guy who openly called for the murder of a United States senator. He is the mainstream in the Democratic Party. Show me his counterpart on the right. I don't know where he exists. Anyway, it's like trying to explain this to my family because I got a bunch of old school liberals in my family. And they don't understand that the younger generation of Democrat is not what they are. They're not leftover hippies. They're not the peace love people from the 60s that made it into the 70s, and then they are the working class blue dog Democrats. Those people don't exist. The Democratic Party is run by leftist elitists who hate the West. You couldn't say that about the leftists of old. They wanted equality. They wanted freedom. They wanted all of these things, all these great values. That's not what the left wants today. The left wants censorship. The left wants everyone to live in their own ideological bubble that they share, and outside of that, they want everyone to shut the hell up. They do not want. They are very comfortable with violence because everyone outside of their political circle is a fascist. And Republicans they're Nazis. And if all Republicans are Nazis and you need to punch a Nazi, that was something I don't know if we remember that happened 10 years ago. It's just not the same people anymore. And the people don't understand that. Like old Democrats, and I mean old, just if you're above the age of 45, 50, they don't understand that the younger Democrats are not the same people. They don't believe the same things. And they haven't learned that yet. But maybe we'll get there one day. Anyway, we are going to leave it there for the week. As always, questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comments below. And we'll read our favorite one on next week's episode. Until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Enjoy your Friday. I will catch you next week